This is the Michigan Chronicle, powered by Real Times Media. There is a lot to get to as it relates to Mayor Duggans' State of the City address on Tuesday night. We'll tackle those issues with our panel of guests. We'll get to them in just a moment, but we come to you from our brand new studios in downtown Detroit, Studio 1452. I'm digital anchor Andre Ash. And joining us is former state legislature and someone who has spent some time, of course, in state government and now serving as a member of the Detroit School Board DPSCD, Gay-Dagnogo. Also joining us for this segment is someone who has spent some time working with previous mayors in Detroit, former Detroit City Council member Sheila Cockrel, now with the Citizen Detroit. All right, so Sheila, we'll get to you in just a moment, but first, the mayor spent a lot of time Tuesday night in his address talking about equity and inclusion and opportunities for Detroiters. Take a listen.
In America, talent has been evenly distributed, but opportunity has not. And as your City of Detroit government, we think it's our responsibility to fight that inequality. We think Detroit government can be the springboard for opportunity, helping Detroiters, no matter their neighborhood, achieve their dreams. In Detroit, opportunity is rising.
All right, so he says opportunity is rising. You've worked policy in Detroit for quite some time. Under Mayor Duggan, is opportunity rising for Detroiters?
I believe it is, but I would want to put it in the context that this is a long struggle. When the disinvestment happened in the city of Detroit, really beginning in the 50s, but accelerating after the 1967 rebellion, when the migration of capital out of Detroit devastated the city's budget and the city's infrastructure. That's all of the stepping stones to raging inequality and lack of equity that has characterized the relationship between the city of Detroit and the rest of the region for generations. So it's a long haul. What I really respect is the mission statement that the mayor put out, the sort of saying out loud that equity is the goal, that talent is distributed evenly, opportunity is what isn't, is an acknowledgement that, frankly, I think has been growing in the last few years, led in substantial measure by the young people and the Black Lives Matter movement, to really sort of putting the question of equity front and center in terms that are different than it's been discussed in the past.
A lot of people, or in some sectors of the city, will criticize the mayor for not addressing race enough in his leadership or in his tenure, especially in a time over the past year where we've seen race issues driven to the forefront, including the protests and the marches when it comes to Black Lives Matter. But the mayor, in some ways, tried to address opportunities for Detroiters, equity. Does the mayor need to address race at all, especially when that has been for many years a heightened issue across the city and this region?
I think there's many ways and different ways that race can be discussed and should be discussed. Frankly, I think in this next era, the era that we're entering now, that white people need to be talking with each other about what white privilege means. And I don't think that that's something that happens at the municipal level of government. But I candidly, I think I never thought I'd live to hear, routinely media people talking about white privilege. That's a term and a set of ideas that comes out of the 1960s. And so to me, there's some interesting steps that are being taken. White people that I know are thinking differently and talking differently about race than in some, not everybody, but in different ways than they used to. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity where white people in the region can start having conversations with each other about how white privilege has impacted people of color in our region, and how, as white people are impacted by privilege.
The mayor said this last night or on Tuesday night that he's not just talking, he's actually delivering when it comes to equity for Detroiters and removing some of those barriers that he outlined. And he talked about reducing auto insurance, the driver responsibility fee, getting DPD, or actually the bus transportation system, in order with the DDOT buses, providing Detroit attorneys to help Detroiters with court expungement, removing those type of barriers, digitalizing the records for DPS students or those who wanted their old transcript records produced. When you look at those barriers, if you will, to get employment or to seek new opportunity, do you think that the mayor tried to say, you know what, this is my plan and this is what we're doing moving forward, to try to squeeze all he could? Because he went over an hour, by the way, during a time of an election year. He's never gone over his allotted time, but he has a lot of issues to try to work out and successes to try to claim during an election year. Is this different?
I don't think so much. A couple of comments, Andre. One, having worked in city government, one of the things I know is that the work that's being done, it's hard to see cumulatively its impact on everybody all at once. So you're working with different issues and you're making progress, but it doesn't seem to everybody that everybody's seeing progress. So, and that's just a function of the nature of government and the nature of fixing broken systems. So that's one thing. Secondly, sure, it's an election year, and all politicians, I mean, I'll be surprised if any sitting member of city council or the mayor or the city clerk isn't going to spend a fair amount of time when they get the opportunity talking about their agenda and how successful they have been, or, and what the challenges are that they're facing. So I'm not troubled by that at all.
Yeah. But do you also think that the mayor has been able to attempt at working at those who disagree with him, making an attempt to address some of the criticism and take them into consideration and then turn them around into policy making? Do you think that has tried to reach into those corners of a segment of Detroiters who just don't agree with his leadership on some issues?
Well, that's always, there's always people who are going to disagree with whoever's in leadership. That's just part of how it goes. I think it's really important that all voices be listened to, that all voices be respected and be heard, because that's part of what, as an elected official, you're supposed to do. But one of the things that you learn early is that no matter what you do, there are going to be folks who are not satisfied with the quality of your leadership or the work that you're doing. So I think it's a balance, but I do think it's very important to listen to all points of view and to take into account some of the perspectives that people bring to the table. And I think in some ways, some of the issues that you hear talked about, I thought he was addressing from his point of view last night, some of the concerns that some folks have.
Some of those issues that he addressed was the downward trend in poverty and unemployment, but those statistics took a dramatic turn and rise during the COVID pandemic of 2020. How has the mayor been able to manage crises or a global pandemic while also addressing some of the other plaguing issues on his table?
Sure. Well, I think the mayor and his entire team's management of the pandemic and the health major crisis that has caused for people in the city of Detroit, the number of people that we've lost to COVID is staggering, and I think the city has been extraordinarily well served by the first phase in terms of dealing with testing, and then the second phase in terms of getting folks vaccinated, creating that opportunity. I think that's been done extremely well. The challenges that the mayor has in terms of the issues of poverty, like issues like poverty and all the affordable housing and what happens with car insurance, and that all of those matters are now also impacted by the loss of revenues during the pandemic, during the shutdown. So it's going to take, there's going to need to be more time. It's going to take more time to address some of these challenges. than it could have had the pandemic not basically grind everything to a halt.
Final question, because the mayor addressed a new policy that he has put to the forefront, and that is the people plan. The $50 million that he is attempting to raise to address issues that keep Detroiters held back, such as a high school completion, providing the opportunity to pay Detroiters while they learn a trade, and other issues. So two questions folded into one. How do you see Mayor Duggans' mayoral leadership in addressing this new frontier policy of the People's Plan and that working relationship that he has with the current council and trying to get these things done compared to your time in city government working for previous mayors?
Okay, well, first of all, I think the mayor has an extraordinary team around him. Nicole Sherd-Freeman, her leadership at Workforce is just phenomenal. I mean, I was at a time when I was on council, the jobs in the workforce development department literally in at least one of the eras basically went to friends and family, and it was not addressing structural issues. This administration certainly, and with her leadership, is doing an extraordinary job. The fact that I didn't know there were 9 centers around the city. That's phenomenal. That's bringing government closer to the people. I mean, it's absolutely outstanding. So I think that's really those are the kinds of things that you don't see the consequences in sort of some big way. They're going to be incremental. They're going to be, family by family, person by person, what it means to an individual. Anyway, so. And was that there was a second part to your question that I've forgotten. I don't remember.
Yeah, the $50 million People's Plan and him working with City Council to get that done.
Yes, well, the $50 million, that's it's great, great agenda. It's going to take more than $50 million to address, the disinvestment and the impacts of structural racism and patterns of racial residential segregation that go back generations. That stuff isn't going to get handled exclusively by $50 million. But there are so many other agendas, there's other groups working on the same agenda in terms of some of the philanthropic foundations I think it's all very good. In terms of the difference between the relationship between this mayor and the council and my experience, particularly the final 8 years, it was a very tumultuous time in the city and a very tumultuous relationship. So I see this as a more and I think this mayor works very hard, and his team, at cultivating relationships with individual members in a way that has been useful to him achieving a great deal of his agenda.
Well, you're doing a lot of work at the Citizen Detroit, cultivating policy and other ideas to move Detroit forward, and we'll love to talk about that and much more. So we've got to have you back. Sheila Cockrel, former Detroit City Council member and CEO of Citizen Detroit, thanks so much for joining us here at the Michigan Chronicle, powered by Real Times Media. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. And joining us next is Gay-Dagnogo with the Detroit School Board.
Do you know a graduating Detroit high school senior? The Michigan Chronicle and TCF Bank are offering $100,000 in scholarships to go towards college or trade school. Apply today at michiganchronicle.com/swag awards.
And now we're with longtime activist, former state legislator, and now a member of the Detroit School Board, DPSCD, Gay-Dagnogo, who joins us right now to get her reaction of Mayor Duggans' State of the City address Tuesday night. The mayor, again, talked a lot about equity and opportunity and inclusion for Detroiters, the work that he's doing and moving forward. Take a listen.
And you're going to see a lot more rehab because the land bank just sold 1,000 houses in the last year, 70% of them bought by Detroiters. And you're going to hear a story that's going to surprise you. How many times have you heard, nobody's doing anything in my neighborhood, I can't make the land bank work, etc.? But there are people out there, a lot of them, who are buying these houses, that are fixing them up. And I want you to see a story that I hope will inspire a lot more. Fella who's a star in the music industry. Now he's a star in our neighborhoods, King Yachty.
All right. The mayor also went on not only to tell his story, but also to present statistics on what the city of Detroit is doing now under his own demolition department, which formerly was the Detroit Land Bank, what they're doing to provide Detroit companies to do Detroit work hired by Detroiters. And Sherry, we know that you've had a history with the city of Detroit as it relates to one of your properties, but now this entity has fallen under a Detroit demolition department. But again, the mayor provided the statistics that now they have the funding because of proposal in to tear down more houses in Detroit, provided by Detroit companies, and Detroiters doing the work. Do you find that the mayor deserves any credit at all, or do you believe that he's not doing enough?
So thank you so much, and I appreciate you having me on your show. You're absolutely right. My organization, the Coalition to Integrate Technology and Education, did acquire a property. Actually, we acquired two properties, and we have just finally come through the legal aspect of our property being wrongfully demolished. We learned a great deal in that process. Don't feel like the outcome was absolutely fair or equitable, but nonetheless, we find ourselves in a place where we are now seeking to advance a community garden in that area. But I have to say that demolition in the city of Detroit is one of those questionable areas that is for too long. We've not seen the level of transparency that is necessary and a path forward, an opportunity, as the mayor highlighted throughout his state of address or state of the city, for all African American contractors to be a part of that process. Simply lifting up one individual as the poster person for the department when there's so much work that has been given to companies like Adamo for too long. I think that needs to be diversified, and I think the citizens deserve an opportunity for transparency to just see how the bids are put forward, how the contractors are selected, and how more opportunities can be shared among all contractors. We shouldn't have contractors that are out here actually looking for work. We should have an opportunity that is open and available to all.
But now under Proposal N, which is now providing the funding for demolition and revitalization in Detroit, which is now hiring a percentage of more Detroit companies to do the work, Detroiters are actually to do the work. Is there any progress you see being made that Duggans is doing right? Or do you feel like, again, it's just not good enough, especially when you consider his tenure over the past few years?
So I'd say this, amidst COVID, everything has become challenging. So, I think the jury is still out. I think there were some reports immediately after Proposal N was passed where many were referring to it as bait and switch. So I think the jury is still out. I think the program still has to be monitored, and we have to hold the mayor accountable, and that's the job of the Detroit City Council members. And so providing citizens, taxpayers, with the transparency, we shouldn't have companies where they're situations where they're picking and choosing who the contractors are individually. But I think it has to be a clean, clear, transparent process where anyone that has the equipment necessary can actually bid on those jobs. And let me just say this. I think we have to look at taking things a step further because we know how expensive bonds can be. If we're seeking to advance minorities in the space of procurement, we have to look at ways that we can make it work. That's what they did in Atlanta. They made it work for African American business owners and contractors. And I think the city of Detroit can take a note from Atlanta and do some of the similar things as well.
But Mayor Duggan, as he pointed out in his address Tuesday night, will make the point that his office, under his leadership, has done a lot for Black-owned businesses through numerous programs, even during COVID, with the expansion or revitalization of the Livernois Avenue of fashion and for the the match, business partnership,
Motor City Match.
Motor
Yes.
City Match.
Yes.
So, what grade would you give the mayor on his speech and his tenure so far?
So, I don't just evaluate speeches or PowerPoints. I think he did an excellent job with the PowerPoint presentation. I think we have to evaluate him based on his work. And he said you should evaluate him on attracting and building the population of the city. That was one of the metrics that he chose to grade himself on. We still don't have numbers from the census to really give a true evaluation of what the impact he's had, and if, what will that grade be? Did you attract residents, or, did you attract more taxpayers? I know we have a number of young professionals that have moved down into the heart of the city, many of which are paying rent. They're not paying taxes. So I would, venture to say that the jury's still out on evaluating through the metrics that he pointed out we should use in that regard. With respect to the Avenue of Fashion, that is one area that has been able to do well and to thrive with the ups and downs of the city. And so every business person in that area deserves all of the support, all the PPP that was provided, and many more grants and opportunities, because they stuck through some very hard times when the streets were torn up, COVID hit them. They hung in there, and I applaud their tenacity. But that has more to do with the tenacity and those who are committed to the city and those business persons. Yes, the grants, the PPP helped, but many of them were like low interest loans. I think they deserve more than that, and I think we need to show greater investment in those areas. And some are appreciative of Motor City Match. I mean, every little bit helps. But when you look at the comparison and the investment and the people that have downtown benefited, pennies on the dollar, paying for buildings, penny on the dollar, then you compare an apples to oranges for what the people on the Avenue of Fashion receive.
Well, and you talk about metrics and data, and I think the mayor is here right now. He'll point to on his slides as it relates to poverty and unemployment, those numbers taking a dive and then going up again in 2020. But when it comes
we have to give a shout out to the work that was put in place by President Obama as well, and helping to stimulate our economy. And we know that, I'm not going to say the mayor hasn't done some work in the city. He has a phenomenal team, many people of which I respect. And I think they went to work every day seeking to carry out the objectives that were outlined in a myriad of the mayor's state of the city. So, I mean, I applaud the accomplishments, the things that he was able to do. I say we still have a lot more to do.
Well, let's talk also about the barriers that he mentioned and providing equity to Detroiters. One of the barriers that he said he worked on to peel back was providing transportation to more Detroiters, with fixing DDOT and digitizing DPS records for students and to get employment, providing Detroit attorneys for court expungement for Detroiters. But here's another one, reducing auto insurance and taking away driver responsibility. I know you had a little hand in that as being a former legislator. Going to work to Lansing to get those accomplishments, he would say, will be a part of his work of pulling back the barriers for Detroiters. What says you?
So I'll say this with respect to auto insurance. This is something that the residents have to have a long memory. Actually, I didn't have a hand in this auto insurance reform package because I knew it was wrong. And I knew that it would not yield the savings that the mayor touted.
You were very against it.
Yes, he touted that it would save anywhere near 50, 60, almost 70% in some instances. During his presentation, during his State of the City last night, it provided what? About 20% for some people. But guess what? He's encouraging you to shop around. That's the same thing that they've always said. For some people, he said 10% because they didn't do anything. So now he's throwing the responsibility on the consumer, when in fact, he said this package would be the cure-all. It would reduce insurance. I was also told by community stakeholders, because he said it, that there was no redlining. Now, all of a sudden, he's ready to get rid of redlining in the next 5 years. So you got to have a long memory and remember what people say versus what they do. So did that really remove a barrier, or did that just gut the auto no-fault system as we know it, reduce potential care for those that might have a catastrophic injury, and add further liabilities. Most people don't know that they can now be sued. And so if you have any resources, if you have a home, if you have a bank account, you had better add an umbrella package insurance on your insurance policy, because if you hit someone, God forbid, you can be sued and they can come after your resources and your assets.
And the mayor will make the point that auto insurance drops a lot for Detroiters, as much so this year as more insurance companies begin to come online and Detroiters can shop around. But
wait, let me, if I may, because I listened to that part intensely. When they come online, that's another promise. That's not a proven fact of what has already happened. He said more insurance companies want to come online once they are credentialed to do so. That did not address the problem that he highlighted would be the cure-all for a reduction. Right now, what we realized, or what his numbers stated, was 10% for some people because they didn't do anything. Again, throwing the responsibility on the consumer. And 20% for those who went and sought other areas, but they have to shop around. And more insurance companies want to do business in the city of Detroit. Not that they're here now, but again, the package was framed as a cure-all, a fix-all, and providing opportunities for everyone so they wouldn't drive dirty. Now we're seeing these very minimal. So you gave up full lifetime coverage for a 10% reduction, and you didn't get 10% if you added on liability insurance. And that's the thing people have to pay attention to, the details, not just fluff.
Let's talk about more of the opportunity Duggans says he's providing, especially when it comes to jobs. And you could not ignore the setting in which Duggan gave the address Tuesday
setting,
night,
by the way,
at the Jeep facility on the east side, which is providing thousands of jobs to Detroiters. What's your take on that as far as the optics and how that looks? Detroiters saying maybe the guy's not that bad, or?
Well, I don't know how the optics look, but I know that there's opportunity, and just shout out to the new Chrysler plant, shout out to the UAW leadership for helping to negotiate this path as well. And that's what this is. This is a group effort that's making sure that Detroiters get access to jobs. I'm glad as well to help be one of the persons that had a bill in that package to remove the criminal records that allow people now to get several felonies expunged, getting them counted as one felony. So, being one of the only Detroiters to have a bill in that package, I mean, that's a big deal. So it's historical. It's part of my legacy. And I applaud all the Democrats and the Republicans that had bills in that package. God bless his memory. Rep. Isaac Robinson also had a bill in that package. And so I'm looking forward to April 11th and celebrating that work that we all worked on to ensure that Detroiters can get a clean slate and a fresh start.
The mayor tried to get, it seems, so much talked about in under an hour that he actually went over his allotted time. He never usually does that. But then again, it's also an election year. What says you about what we could look ahead to as we move down this election year 2021? And is it time for a woman mayor in Detroit?
I think it's time for a woman throughout the country. We've shown that women have been leading. They've been getting the work done. I would love to see a woman in leadership in the city of Detroit. They have more compassion. This is Women's History Month. We know that we have many very capable women throughout the city of Detroit that could be an excellent mayor. They understand the issues of our schools, our economy, our homes, the neighborhoods. That's what's important. Someone that just won't be laser-like focused downtown, but will look at the families throughout our entire city and address the needs in a matriarchal way. Yes, that would be phenomenal.
And does that include yourself?
Not at this time. I have made it very clear that I'm very happy serving on the Detroit School Board as a former Detroit public school teacher that has left the legislature but not left the agenda. to advance for and fighting for our children, fighting for public education, fighting for our teachers. I feel that I'm in a very great spot to do that. Also serving in two capacities, one with Team Wellness, addressing mental health, as well as with the UAW Government Affairs. And so I feel like I do some really great work in addressing the issues that is before our city, our schools, and education and mental health well-being.
All right. Well, we got to have you back. There was a lot to talk about and other issues. So thank you so much for joining us. And this has been a recap of the State of the City address by Mayor Mike Duggan. You can watch this clip in its entirety at MichiganChronicle.com. I'm Andre Ash, and this has been Michigan Chronicle, powered by Road Ties Media, coming to you from Studio 1452.